All right, last hour of the week. We kick it off with our good friend Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Good morning, Schaefer.
What song was that? What did I come into?
Carnival 9 by Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Good tune,
Gotcha.
right?
Mm-hmm. As a kid, they would play this at Spurs games before the second half.
I probably wouldn't say good tune, but I haven't been accused of having good musical taste ever, so there's that.
What is your favorite artist, Mike Schaefer?
I'm one of those people who doesn't probably have like a favorite. Like it's Jason Isbell. I guess if I had to pick one person this point in time, it would be that.
Okay.
But generally, I'm the kind of guy who tells you I have an eclectic taste in music, but really only listens to like 90s rock and alternative rock and some country, and that's basically the extent of it.
What was the last concert you went to?
Nickelback.
What is the last concert I went to? I went to Nickelback in October of last year.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been to one since then. I think I'm going to the Goo Goo Dolls at the Astro in August. I'm going to go to Creed. So basically, I'm in the nostalgia tour era of my life.
Yeah, you're in divorced dad rock, man. Hell yeah.
I mean, I hope I can stay together.
No, I know, but that's I'm not saying that anything is going to happen, but I'm just saying that you're into the type of music that divorced dads are.
Show, Matt. What are you? And then some people learned that we were pregnant based on this show, thanks to John Bishop. So not this show, but this station. So I would rather not have you announcing a divorce that isn't happening.
No, I am not serving you your papers. I've given no inside information about what's going on in the Schaefer household.
I can't afford that. I would be just living under an overpass here in Lincoln, of which there's several to choose from. So we have to stay together so I can have a house.
No. I was just saying your choice in music is amongst the type of people that get divorced. But it's to each their own. Good people to listen to music with.
Hey, if you guys want, anybody out there that would like to break news of your significant other being pregnant, come to 1620 The Zone. Somebody will.
That would actually be that's a good bit. You guys should have like one show a month where people can just admit news that they want broken on air.
That'd be great.
To other family members.
I was going to say that, or have Jose Canseco announce it using Cameo.
Not a bad one. You get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to announce things that happen to dictators around the world. That'd be pretty good too. I don't know how available he is.
Or him and John Cena. They seem like they enjoy doing that.
Yeah. Well, John Cena only has so many shows, so you'd have to try.
He's got 16 dates left, Michael. 16 dates.
Just fast forward all of it.
Are you a Director's Cup person? Big deal, no deal? Kind of pay attention? Where are you at with the Director's Cup, which Nebraska had a really, really nice, they're on a nice little run from Trev to Troy to doing well in that event or that race.
Yeah, I wasn't someone who got real worked up about it in the way that it felt like some in the local media did during the end of Eichhorst and the Bill Moose days. But I do think it shows. It can show that you have a healthy overall athletic department. What I find fascinating now with the Director's Cup is how do teams make sure that they are competitive or attempt to be competitive across the board in the rev share era. I mean, you look at North Carolina, it came out and announced there's just 4 schools that are going to be part of that rev share pot. Like, so what does the rest of their athletic department sort of look like? At what levels do those programs fall? Can Nebraska sustain having a high rev share slice to football, but also make sure that volleyball, baseball, both basketball, wrestling, track and field, bowling, that they all get to have success too, that they're not an also ran program or less than or whatever word you want to use to describe it. So in a weird way, I'm fascinated by it going forward because I'm wondering how much stock to put into it if you have teams that are just or programs that are basically just like, we're not going to really support or fund this athletic program at the same level anymore because we're focused on X. And you have other places that are like, well, we want to be really good at this, so that's where we're going to put rev share money. And so it's just sort of I don't know. It sort of fascinates me as a whole for college athletics, and maybe it's not going to go that deep. I don't know how many track teams around the country are going to get rev share. But, you have those programs like Arkansas and Baylor and Oregon. Like, are they really not going to be good at track just because they choose to put money towards football. I'm just fascinated by how all of this is going to work.
Schaefer, Trae Taylor is the number 7 quarterback recruit in the class of 2027. He's the second in the state of Illinois behind Israel Abrams, who that's going to be a great game between Carmel and Montini Catholic later in the year in Illinois high school football, which might decide where Trae ends up. But do you think there's a possibility that Trae Taylor ends up being a 5-star prospect and or the number 1 quarterback recruit in the class of 2027?
It's entirely possible. I know that Tom Loy and Andrew Ivins were out here for the 7-on-7 thing that Nebraska had earlier in the month, and they were blown away by Trae Taylor. Just both his personality and all of that, but also just watching him on the field. For Ivins, he said it was the best that he'd seen him in any of the events that he had seen him previously. He thought he looked incredibly confident, poised, was able to make throws and came up in big situations. And obviously it's 7-on-7 relative to the full game of football. But I think in the settings of camps and 7-on-7 stuff, he's clearly got upside of being a 5-star quarterback. I mean, I don't know that he'll be the number 1 quarterback in the class. I would be genuinely shocked if we're not having the conversation at some point, this time a year from now about his Elite 11 results and how he did out there. And I fully expect that he's going to represent himself well in every capacity. So he does have that level of upside. It was interesting talking with Alan True, another guy that we have at 24/7 Sports. He does a lot of the Midwest recruiting updates and evaluations, and he'd seen Trae Taylor several times, but he'd also seen him in the context of full 11-11. And for those that don't know, it's not like Trae Taylor is at a high school that just lit the world on fire. No. I think they were 4 and
they're 5 and 7
or something.
Yeah,
5 and 7.
Yeah, they were not. So, they're not either, Mike. They're not like a power. They're not. Carmel isn't considered to be. Hey, every year they're super good. I mean, they definitely have to battle it out.
So one of the cool things is that when you work for a place like 24/7, they cover this stuff in a lot of different ways. You have Alan, who's able to tell you what he looked like in that environment. You have a guy talking about the camps and the 7-on-7, and they can tell you where the progress maybe has kind of been there. But one of the things that I think is noteworthy, at least for Trae Taylor, is that he's going to have an opportunity to kind of show in his junior year how he's gotten better and how he can make that team better. I mean, a lot of your top guys don't play on teams, that are 5 and 7. And so I think what you're going to see is in what ways can he help them, and in what ways is it just out of his hands? If they can't stop anybody, he's probably not going to be able to put up enough points to game, that sort of thing. But is he still putting up big numbers, getting them in situations where they're competing at a high level, even if they aren't necessarily winning games? I mean, I think that's going to be something to sort of watch this fall. But I think all in all, he's a really exciting prospect for Nebraska football.
And they're going to be playing real quick. Like, they're going to be playing top teams in the state this year. I mean, they're playing Montini, they're playing Loyola, they're playing St. Lawrence.
They don't exactly shy away in scheduling.
Like, so even their mid games against Marion Catholic and Fenwick, like those are 2 teams that it's not necessarily easy to beat them. Like honestly, if they go, so by the way, I was wrong. It was 4 and 7, so that's my apologies. But if they're over 500 this year for Carmel, that would be massive for that program with the schedule that they have.
And we will find out.
Will we find out on Sunday? A fellow Chicago product says yes to Nebraska in Claude and Puma.
I don't love this spot for Nebraska. I think that they have a really good relationship with Claude and his family. I think that, in an old system, the proximity of being able to basically say, like, hey, it's a Big Ten school recruiting against 2 SEC schools, and it's going to be a lot easier for his family to see him in a Big Ten schedule. That just doesn't matter as much in the NIL era. Like, they can just pay to bring the family to any game that they want to. And so, and they can negotiate that in contracts and everything else. And so I think Nebraska, and I hate doing this because it's one of these things where, whenever you don't get someone and you claim that NIL is involved, it always seems like sour grapes. I just don't think Nebraska is going to match what Auburn or Florida is willing to spend in NIL. And so if that is a difference maker in any way, shape, or form, I just don't know that Nebraska is going to go there for a guy who needs several years of development before he's going to be a potential cornerstone left tackle for you. Like, I think he's a very exciting prospect, but this is someone who's just started playing football. very, very good athlete, basketball player, soccer player. I have no question that he's going to adapt to being able to play football at a high level. But is Nebraska willing to commit that much money to someone who's that raw? We'll find out. And I know Auburn is. I know Auburn's more than willing to spend money. And Florida, I think too. And Florida has a lot of momentum on the recruiting side of things, which is kind of always laughable to me because we'll get into the season and they'll go 8-4 or worse as usual, and we'll do the whole song and dance with Billy Napier and all of that. But I have a tough time seeing Nebraska win this one. If they do, it's a hell of a recruiting job for Matt Rule and Donovan Raiola. And so I'm not saying they're entirely out of it, but if I had to put it right now, I think they're running third, and I think Auburn's running first. But that can still change.
In terms of type of prospect, is Nebraska in no man's land in the regard that they're not up there yet and getting the top guys across the country, but they don't necessarily need to take a bunch of projects?
I don't know if I would. I'm not sure how I would classify that. They're in a weird spot for a variety of reasons. I think they've chosen to put themselves in a small class this year. I think they've chosen to really hyper focus on a handful of targets and not necessarily have plans C, D, E, and F as they had in the past. I think they don't have to take those guys, and it's one of the big things for me right now is if you're not getting one of your top defensive line targets, I don't think it behooves you to just go grab a guy and throw him into your class and be like, oh, well, we got a defensive lineman right here. We'll see how he develops. I just don't think they have to do that. They have a young enough roster. They have a lot of guys that I think they want to see who they are and what they can do and all of that sort of thing. And so because of that, be judicious, be smart about what you recruit. And then it was a weird cycle because of all the different parts that they have swapping in and out on the coaching staff. I just don't think that Terry Braden was really able to recruit at the level that I think he will going forward. I think Addison Williams and Bill Simpson, same sort of thing. And then the other thing is Nebraska's sales pitch has to evolve from, hey, we're really close to doing something big here to, hey, we've actually started taking steps and we're doing something. So I don't think that they can just sell the sea of change the way that you normally get after a coaching change anymore because they're now into their fourth recruiting cycle with it. So I think it's time for results to do a lot of the speaking when it comes to what Nebraska football is all about, because I just don't think they're going to do it with NIL and money whipping people. And I just don't think that this class was set up in such a way that they were ever going to take a big number. So it was always going to look just a little odd.
Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7 joining us, not getting divorced. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike J. Schaefer.
Thank you.
All right, so the prodding from you and your colleagues at 24/7. So I've got Scott Miles on my big board as part of the class of 26, 2 wide receivers. Will I be able to move Devin Jackson next week over to Nebraska's commitment list?
Yeah, that one is kind of a fascinating recruitment because Oregon's sniffing around. They want another safety, and they've missed out on a couple people, and Devin Jackson's high on their board. Miami, there's some real feel that during his visit there that he was really close to committing and shutting everything down. At one point, he was committed to Florida, and he went back there for a visit midweek before he came out to Nebraska. And with all the momentum Florida has going on, does he want to jump back into that class? At the beginning of this whole thing, at the beginning of June, he was at LSU. They're still involved to a degree. And then you have Nebraska, where his teammate Danny Odom is going. He's been here 3 times this calendar year already. I think he likes Addison Williams quite a bit. I think there's opportunity to play here, and they have kind of a nice mixture of Miami guys. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but they've done a nice job recruiting Miami, and those guys have actually played and are set to have big roles here again this year. And so that certainly doesn't hurt their ability to recruit in South Florida. I'm going to lean towards they won't get Devin Jackson, but he is one of those guys I would put on the short list that should Nebraska have a nice season, they could potentially flip down the line. Because I think at Nebraska, he would be the number 1 and probably only safety in the class. Elsewhere, he might be the 2nd, 3rd, 4th defensive back, that kind of thing. So I think on a value system, he's probably more valuable to Nebraska. It's just a question of whether he views Nebraska the same way as staying home in Miami or going to Florida or Oregon or, all of these different things. I mean, this is where, we saw him do it with Danny Odom. This is where Nebraska has to be able to win a tough elbows out recruiting battle.
We saw yesterday E.J. Barthel tweeted out a picture of Chicago and then said #pound the pavement. And, kind of indicating that they're going to try and recruit more in that area, especially after they got Trae Taylor. And kind of a two-parter here. Do you think that the commitment of Trae Taylor opened up, to their eyes, okay, we can go and do this, we can go and get some guys in this area? And do you think that this is an actual trend that we're going to see of Nebraska getting consistent Chicago guys, or is this kind of a wait and see and it might be fool's gold?
It's a pretty big wait and see for me, and Gary can add some color to this as well, and you, Matt, obviously being from the area, could too. I don't think of Chicago as this spot where Nebraska has had a ton of recruiting success or have brought in a ton of really notable players. Now, Jordan Westerkamp, Corey Cooper, we'll see how things kind of go, if you want to consider Mario Buford a Chicago guy or
Sure.
the other Buford a Chicago guy.
Yeah.
But as for me, I don't really think of it. I mean, I guess there's Corey McEwen. He'd be mad if I don't say his name, but I don't really think of
Omaha.
Chicago as this area that Nebraska has had a ton of success in. And I don't really think of it as this recruiting hotbed for football. I always think of basketball for Chicago. And so if it seems like the football product is on its way up, then that seems like the sort of place Nebraska needs to kind of go into and recruit hard. But it always feels like if there's someone Nebraska actually wants in the Chicago area, it's a pretty big surprise if they get the commitment. Like Trae Taylor was a surprise in that you would have probably projected him to go elsewhere, but Nebraska went after him the hardest. And you have Notre Dame that goes in there, and Ohio State and Michigan goes in there. And then, of course, you're going to get all the other teams around the country now that recruit nationally are going to go into Chicago. And I just don't know what the foothold is for Nebraska. And so I think they have to be judicious about what they're chasing. But it's a large metro area, but is it more valuable for Nebraska to get a foothold in there than, say, St. Louis, if they could ever do it? I don't know. And are they more likely to pull players from Chicago? I'm not sure on that one either. I don't know that Trae Taylor, for as big of an effect as he might have, I don't know that he could just be a Pied Piper and getting 2-3 kids out of the Chicago area every other year.
We'll get you out on this in a little bit different. This is as we close in on July 1. There are more athletic directors that are revealing which sports are going to get the revenue share pie. Like at Minnesota, they went football, men's and women's basketball, volleyball, and men's hockey. At Illinois, volleyball is going to be in their top 4. We already know that football at Nebraska may be as much as 75% of the $20.5 million. Men's and women's basketball, we assume volleyball. Will there be a 5th? And if there is a 5th, who do you think that 5th sport will be?
I mean, my heart wants to say that it's Nebraska baseball, but it's also an undeniable fact that Nebraska wrestling has been really, really, really good for a lot longer than Nebraska baseball has. And they're the number 2 team, more than likely, going into the 2025 season. Obviously, just picked up the Iowa guy, whose name is escaping me, AJ Ferrari.
Yep.
Yeah. I just really didn't think his last name was the same as the car. I just didn't want to say it.
Or the best race car movie out there.
Ferrari.
You can make a case that wrestling probably deserves it as much as baseball does. But then you look at what baseball's been doing this offseason, where they've changed over their roster and they brought in some interesting guys. This is what I mean. Like, how does Nebraska manage to keep everybody happy? Because if you want to be good at baseball, you have to spend money. You have to spend more money than Nebraska has done, regardless of the NIL era. You have to give more support to Will Bolt over there from facilities and financial standpoint and everything else. Like, it's, Nebraska wants to be good at stuff. Like, the money has to also be there too. But here's the thing. You want to be great at volleyball. It's not like you're going to skimp there. You want to be great at men's basketball. Like, you have to do more than you're doing. Like, this is the challenge. Nebraska can't be great at everything. Matt Rule stood up and said this in front of everybody in March, and I don't know how many people were listening. But in this environment, you have to make choices. So for Nebraska baseball to be great, I don't know if that's going to have to be privately funded by a handful of fanatics. I don't know that there's rev share is going to be enough. I don't know if they're going to have to find a different pathway to being good in the Big Ten and ultimately in the NCAA regionals and everything else. Same with wrestling. Like they're right in that really tough spot where you want both to be good, but is there enough money going around that you're not ultimately hurting each by splitting that in half? So that's going to be really, really tough, I think.
I wonder if we'll get something publicly before July 1, because it seems like a lot of athletic directors are doing that.
Yep. Do you know how much conversation we're going to have about that whenever that comes out? And then the conversation is going to be, well, is men's basketball really worth supporting when you look at its history relative to these other things? Like, it's going to be an awkward conversation around here.
Yep. Sounds like men's basketball will get anywhere from $3 to $3.5 million of the 20.
Which is nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
Well, I mean, football is probably going to be a 75%er.
Yeah.
Right. And they need to win. Like you think the pressure on Matt Rule before was high? Now you're getting 75% of the pie and you're still going 6-6?
No.
Nobody's going to accept that. No. Like we are in a totally different era of expectations and pressure, and that cycle when we get to November is going to be insane with what people are going to expect around the country.
Yes, it is, and we can't wait.
Can't wait.
Schaefer, have a great weekend.
All right, guys, have a good one. Thanks for having me on.
That's Mike Schaefer. I think